Hello and welcome to this little video diary. And in this video, I would like to talk about the game Rage by the company ID Software and my impression of the game after completing the main campaign on the difficulty level hard and on the PC. Okay, so what is the game about? Well, since it's from the creators of Doom, it's a first-person shooter, as you might expect. But the creators weren't satisfied with just making a shooter, so they added some car races, some car combat, and some looting and exploring, and also some mini games here and there. So, is it fun to play? Well, first and foremost, I would like to mention that the game has some technical problems, namely texture pop-in, and the texture pop-in is quite bad, actually. Now, I played around in the settings, but I couldn't get it fixed. And as you can see in the video, it was unplayable, I would say. But I did find some config files online that made it bearable, at least. But I am not alone with having this problem, so it might be worth taking into consideration. Now, if you set aside the technical problems, then the game looks quite nice at a distance. There are some quite visually striking environments in the game, and overall the design of the visuals are quite nice. And there are some really cool looking places in the game. And I would also like to mention that there are some quite nicely designed characters in the game, which I really enjoyed. One thing that I did not enjoy, however, is how awful almost all smaller details in the world look up close. They are extremely low res and just look awful, and it really drags the visuals down in the mud. But enough about how the game looks. How is the story? Well, there is nothing wrong about the concept of the story. It does lack in the execution department, however. For starters, all the characters in the game, they may look cool, but they are completely uninteresting and unremarkable, and none of them get any kinds of development. Another problem in the game is that there is a really slim connection between the plot line and the things you do. It's often just go to talk to person A, he gives you a quest to go to place B to kill person C or get the D or something else. And more often than not, I did either not know or don't care what I was doing. I was just following the quest line. So yeah, the story wasn't all that interesting. Something a bit more interesting was the car combat, vroom, vroom, which is okay. It's fine. The car controls fine on the PC. You can customize your car to a certain degree by new parts to it, and when you are playing the game, you get to unlock new cars, which is fine. And it's okay. It's nothing special, but it works fine. There are also car races that you can partake in the different cities, and they are nice and all. I mean, they aren't all that good. The races are a bit small and a bit too easy, and there are some game modes like capture the points and so on that aren't all that fun. And overall, they're quite simplistic. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to race, then don't race. Personally, I didn't finish all the tracks, but I think it's nice that they are there. And if you get tired of shooting people in the face, you can do something else for a couple of minutes. One complaint that I do have with the cars of that the game often forces you to drive the same roads over and over again to get to the mission areas. And if you add some respawning bandits to that, then it becomes kind of a chore to get to the mission area. Okie dokie. So, how is the shooting? Well, it's very much competent. It's not perfect, it got some flaws, but it's very much competent. So, what does the shooting do right? Well, to start with, there is a decent weapon variety. And there's also different kinds of ammos for each gun, which is pretty neat. There's also some quite imaginative ammo types in the game, which is cool. Another thing that I thought was pretty cool was how the mutants runs and jumps and climbs at the walls and so on. Their animations are really quite cool. And it's also just not eye candy. It has a direct impact on the gameplay, and it's pretty cool, I must say. And there are some especially cool moments later on in the game when there is just swarming with mutants everywhere, and they are jumping around, and you are running around trying to dodge them, and it's really hectic and really cool. But the shooting is overall exactly what you would expect out of a first-person shooter, and it's competent, it's functional, and it's fun. But it does have some problems. The mission areas in the game are very much a linear path. Not only linear, it's a straight out corridor, and it doesn't really fit in well with the exploration part of the game, and it kind of hurts the gameplay quite a bit. Another thing that kind of annoyed me about the level design in the game is how much invisible walls there are. I mean, it's one thing if you use invisible walls to confine the mission area. It's lazy, but okay. But if you have invisible walls over stuffs like chairs or tables inside the mission area, it not only becomes confusing because you can't know what you can jump on or not, but it also makes the game world feel extremely static. Another thing that could have been improved is the game's enemy variety. It's not bad in itself, and for a short game it would be fine, but for a game of this game's length, it becomes a bit stale, and they throw the same kind of enemy at you over and over again. And it doesn't help that some of the enemies in the game are kind of bullet sponges. And because of all this, the game feels a bit repetitive, especially in the early second part of the game. I felt that the game was a bit tedious, which is never a good sign. Now, the game do have some bosses in it to spice the gameplay up, but there are quite few of them, and the few that there are in the game aren't all that fun to fight against, to be honest, which is a bit sad. Now, the game do have regenerating health, which there are different opinions about, but I will say this. Uh, when your health regenerates and when you have so much ammo that you do have in this game, the short to win fights becomes a bit tedious, and the game does very much suffer from that in my opinion. And I also think that the game could have been a bit harder. I played it on difficulty hard, and it wasn't all that challenging. Now, I did mention that you kind of swim around in ammunition, and I do have a beef with that as well, because I think the main concept of you having to loot and craft and sell and buy stuff is kind of cool and it kind of fits in the setting. But I found myself with just enormous amount of ammunition and money, and I can buy anything I want, so why craft or anything like that? And I think that really hurts the whole exploration part. Now, there aren't a whole lot of stuff to explore in the game, but why would I bother with a locked room if the only thing I will find inside the locked room is ammunition to a gun that I already have thousands of bullets for? Another thing that really hurts the whole exploration part is how linear and corridor-like the levels are. Not to mention that the game world does overall feel quite static, stale, and lifeless. Now, the game do also have some side quests and stuff, which I think is a nice touch if you have the interest. But the side quests do reuse a lot of dungeons and assets from the main campaign, but I do not personally have a problem with that. I mean, they're optional, so yeah. Something which I, however, do not approve of is that they reuse the same mission area for different main quests, which is kind of lazy. Now, the main campaign took me around 15 hours to complete, and to be honest, I thought that it kind of overstayed its welcome. so the whole reusing mission areas felt kind of unnecessary. But I had a decent time with the main campaign. It's not perfect, but it's competent, and I guess that is my impression of the game. Thank you for watching.